Hi, welcome to Filmmaker Fridays with the E-Spot with Camille. I'm your host, Camille Kauer. Today, I am super excited for you to meet my guest. He is one of the many members of Simba Productions, a video production company in New York City, and he's worked on several things, all kinds of things. I cannot wait for you to hear his story. You don't have to take my word for it. Take his. Welcome to my show. Welcome to the E-Spot with Camille, Mark Ehrenkranz.
Yay! Thanks for having me.
Like I'll fix it in post. There'll be a round of applause, I promise.
You did great.
So, wow. So you've done so much in your career, and I want to start from the very beginning. Like this isn't a career that a lot of people get to become successful in, and they definitely don't always have long careers. So I'd love to hear how you got started, just so maybe if there's anyone out there that's like looking to take those first steps, they can hear a little bit about how you started. So please share a little bit.
Sure. This is kind of a neat story. There's a place in West Orange, New Jersey called the House of Music, and they recorded Bat Outta Hell there, a Grammy Award-winning Diodato album, and another hit album by this guy who called himself Cool from Jersey City, New Jersey. And I was 14 years old, and I rode my bicycle down there, and I shot Celebrate and Ladies Night with a regular 8 camera. So I learned to be around talent at a young age and become comfortable with the process. And I had this great little music video, my first music video ever, with Ladies Night and Celebrate. So
Wait. I got to bring this up because I interviewed him. He told me this entire story. I did not even put the connection together that it's the same person. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that gave me my spot. And I remember years ago, there was this thing in Mad Magazine where someone wrote a paper in grade school, and they kept repurposing the paper in middle school, in high school, in college. It was the same topic. They just gave it fancier words and a little bit more dressing,
It's called editing, right?
That's it. Just change it up a little bit.
Yeah. Oh,
wow. I did the same thing. So I had my video, and then I started making videos in high school, music videos in college, music videos in Los Angeles.
Even before that, how did you even get the confidence to put yourself in the position? Who gave you your first camera? You just show up to East Orange knowing that maybe you can possibly end up recording one of the most popular pop songs of all time. That's even in the Library of Congress. They're constantly getting
one of the most popular songs of all time.
It's in every movie. Yeah.
And every bar mitzvah and wedding, Celebrate. It's unbelievable.
It's not a birthday party without it, in my opinion. But I am an 80s child, so.
So there's a little bit more backstory to that. My dad was on the zoning board, and he heard that this recording studio was supposed to be built not too far from our home in a residential area. Nobody wanted it. They didn't want the big stars. They didn't want the limos, the drugs, the parties, that kind of thing. Yeah. But it finally got through. And no one knew about it except my dad and the zoning department. So that's when I rode my bicycle down there and basically just volunteered for a job. I just said, I'll do anything. I'll move equipment. I'll, whatever you want me to do, get lunch, whatever has to be done. And so they grew comfortable with me. And then it was really no big deal for me to have this regular 8 camera, which was my dad's, there was technology along the way. There was regular 8, it had no sound. Then there was Super 8 with sound. So this didn't even have any sound. So, I just had the picture. There was no way really for me to sync the sound because I didn't have the technology at that point.
I'm very lucky that I was, technology has caught up to my skill set. So I can do what I love from home. So say no more, because I wouldn't know what, people talk to me about, I have a different mic and different audio and I added, no. It's all in one thing. I can't.
Keep it simple, right?
I'm a hostess. I'm not an AV specialist. Yeah. So, wow. Okay.
So I wasn't a nerd in high school. I was an athlete and I was kind of popular. I was a popular kid, but I would make all of my projects in Super 8 film. Whatever it was, if I had to write a paper for history or social studies, I said to the teacher, can I do a little movie instead? And they said, of course. So I was Mark the movie guy, in the 70s, way before I really started my career, because everybody knew me by the guy who made little movies about his assignments.
Oh, wow. So then
I went to college.
Okay, yeah.
And I went to the University of Michigan, and there were bands from Detroit that were around, so I got to record videotape the Romantics, Nicky and the Corvettes, Johnny Thunders, people that were in and around Michigan at the time. And then I moved to Los Angeles and did the same exact thing, just like the Mad Magazine project, the exact same thing with a Wall of Voodoo, Black Flag, Suburban Lawns, Fear. These were punk rock bands in the 70s. And then Michael Nesmith, one of the old Monkees, who had an attachment to West Orange because Carole King lived there, and she basically wrote Pleasant Valley Sunday about Pleasant Valley Way, the main street in my town, West Orange. And that was my little connection to Michael, and I had shown him my videos, and evidently he liked them, and I got my job on television parts, which was my first real legitimate job on an NBC series on Thursday nights.
What NBC series on Thursday nights?
It was called Television Parts. It aired in 1983, 84. It was right after it was what? After Hill Street Blues and before Night Court, the 9:30 to 10 o'clock spot. Yeah. Okay.
I just missed it. I didn't move I was born here, but I was raised abroad. I didn't move back to America till like 89, 90. So that's why I didn't know that. No, but I'm sure other people out there have heard it, because I definitely have heard of Night Court and Hill Street Blues. We would get tapes from America here and there. And I remember Hill Street Blues being one of them, the ones I enjoyed watching too. So
that was prime time.
Yeah, no, I'm so amazed by your career, because most of the things that you share, which I was really excited about, was just the Wayne's World 25th anniversary that you're involved in, and being part of the New York's Critics as well. And I was like, oh, he gets to watch movies for the fun of it, and and talk about movies with other people, because I kind of host this other show where a lot of times I bring up TV shows and films, and they have no clue what I'm talking about. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna skip that area of entertainment from here on out.
Yeah, we can talk about whatever you want to. We can talk about who I think will win the Academy Awards at the end of the conversation, if you'd like to, and some great new television shows and all that.
Yeah. But, so, what kept you in the career? Because a lot of times, that's the other part of it. Like, you get burnt out, or, it's hard to sustain a regular life and work in the film industry, or you get to a point where maybe because the technology keeps changing that you're not able to keep up with it, or were there any of those pitfalls that you went through, and how did you overcome those?
Yeah, I think I just pivoted is what I did. I think I was 26. I had worked in production for a number of years, 3-4 years. I was exhausted, and I was only 26. And I said to myself, is this the way life is going to be? And I actually got a new job working for a home entertainment distribution company, because at that time, VHS and the video store was such a big thing.
Yeah, Blockbuster.
Blockbuster. And each of those video cassettes cost $65. So that's why it became a rental model. The store may buy 10 of them. That's $650, for a wall of that movie. But I got to learn the business and how movies got monetized theatrically, and then basically home entertainment was the king of the castle in the mid 80s, late 80s, and even into a little bit of the 90s. It was part of our culture. We would go to the video store to sort of talk to the
get your candy, get your like, they would have a lot of movie themed paraphernalia you could buy. I still have my Something About Mary dog that's in the cast thing from that movie. I loved all of that, because growing up overseas, you idolize America through movies and TV. So it's like, it was, I don't know, it was like a little mini Universal Studios in a way.
It
where you
was.
could
It
go.
was our
Yeah,
it
it was
was
an
our
experience.
neighborhood portal to
Mhm.
Hollywood. And you'd
Yeah.
have that video tender who you'd tell what you saw last night, and he wanted to know what you thought of it, and then you'd ask him, and you'd have this whole discussion,
Yeah.
which was a wonderful part of our culture. But unfortunately, Blockbuster didn't heed the warning as to what Netflix was doing. And Netflix was more of a mail order service at the beginning, shipping you DVD. And they really didn't think that would be anything because they wanted to uphold the stores. So they really got their lunch eaten by Netflix, and it basically put them out of business.
Yeah, I was one of those early believers in Netflix because I was living in LA, and whenever I couldn't, like my father's in DGA, so he would always have these screenings he could go to, and I'd go with him. But when like when you live in LA, you have to pay $13 for parking, $25 for the ticket each. Maybe there's a line. It's like, I could
And
just
it's like
order
New
it
York
in a
City.
queue. Yeah, exactly. So it's like I could just get it at home, get the same, somewhat of the same experience, hang out with friends, and get a watch at our leisure. And it was different. It was new. It was a new way to watch things. But like I love that you brought up about the community of Blockbuster that it brought. But even for you, like that transition of now with streaming where people are complaining about paying $30 is like, wait, it was $65 a tape and you had to rewind it and like physically, and it could eat tapes really quickly and stuff. So it's just like, we don't know how good we have it sometimes. Not to mention how heavy the equipment was back then to record on those big, or well, even the little, I can't remember what they're
Well,
called
there
now, but
was
they were still huge. Yeah.
Betamax.
And
Yeah.
editing, because I took editing in college for video production. And
Sure.
like if you cut the tape, like
The old
so much easier
slaves, the
now.
beta slaves, A to B, B
And
to
all the
A.
dials and knobs and just like, the sound and jump cuts. Like now, they want jump cuts. They want it to, it's like part of the style and not matching color. Like it's,
Absolutely.
they don't
That's
know.
style now, not a
Everything you
mistake.
can do right here. It's so fantastic. Like everybody can be a creator, and it evens the playing field in that way too, where maybe people who felt their stories weren't being shared or from their perspective, they can make their own or make,
Absolutely. So to continue the story,
yeah.
I learned how to monetize movies, and at that point, people would come to me because they knew I had an interest and I had worked in it. Mark, what do I do with my movie? I made a movie. Now what do I do? And I wish they had asked me that before they made the movie, but better late than never.
Business show, yeah, not show business. Yeah.
And I'd go around to my studio friends, smaller studios, Samuel Goldwyn, A24, Sony Pictures Classics.
So small. Nobody's ever heard of any of those. Just kidding.
But not the majors,
Wow.
Not the majors like Warner, Disney, Paramount, Fox. These were sort of the mini majors, Lionsgate at the time. And I would say, here, I've got a movie. I think it's good. I'd screen them before I'd present them and hopefully get them distribution, get the client distribution. I would take a commission, and it was a nice little business. So in terms of me learning the process of how to make things and all the trials and tribulations that go into it, and then being able to mentor someone in terms of bringing it to market was very satisfying because people would put their blood and guts into projects and then basically lose all the money or have false expectations of making money when it's your first feature. It's more of a calling card than moneymaker.
Yeah, no, it's very rare that somebody strikes gold the first time, or even to get off the shelf. Sometimes there's been several pilots I've worked on that never even saw daylight, and I keep thinking, well, you never know.
It's a miracle. It's a miracle
It
when
really
something
is.
makes a screen. It really is. The stars have to be in alignment.
Yeah, there's a lot of, well, I haven't watched this documentary yet, but there's a lot of talk about this documentary that just came out, I guess, yesterday with Kanye West, where one of his biggest songs, they like during his pitch of it, they just like just start moving around, start doing others, like not even taking him seriously and so on. And it's just like trying to explain your art to someone too, and keep dealing with the rejection of it all, or just the dismissal of your efforts can be something that maybe you don't want to see it through anymore, or you take the rejection and think, oh, maybe this isn't for me, I'm not talented enough, and so on. So was there ever a time you went through that, or even mentored someone where you helped them get past all those no's and rebuttals and was able to make a big, or, was able to find a way to be successful in this industry? Because I know even I'm guilty of being told no enough times. I was like, well, I'll just go back to working in spas, or I'll go back, or even now with the pandemic, I had to transition. But this is something I've always kind of wanted to do. So it worked out for me in that sense. But for others out there that are watching.
Well, I think I've had a couple of success stories. One was this young Latina, Suzanne Cordero, who would be an intern at my film series, basically just coiling cable and setting up equipment, lighting, that kind of thing. And she wanted to get into the business, so I got her a job at one of the smaller production companies here in New York. They had made some larger independent films. Little Miss Sunshine was one of them, Big Beach Films. And she worked for them, and she earned her reputation. And then she got to work on a picture of theirs. And then once their picture wrapped, she got work on other pictures, basically being a PA, and then the captain of the PAs, and then a production manager, and then a unit production manager. And then she finally, like your dad, got into the Directors Guild, I think having taken a test. It was the Directors Guild apprenticeship program.
Yeah, he was a DJ. He was one of the first DGA trainees, actually. Yeah, and he's a UPM, oddly enough.
Yeah. And she continues. She's in her 40s now, and she's been doing it for 20 years. And it's wonderful for me, because every once in a while I come across a really good intern, and I say to them, you don't want to be doing this all your life. What do you want to do? You want to work on a set? And they say, yeah. And, their eyes open up. And I just call Susan. And if they can prove their worth and withstand the hours and all the craziness, then they can have a career if they withstand it, because the rigors of this industry are incredible. We sort of adopt the Vince Lombardi ethic, which is if you're on time, you're 10 minutes too late.
Right. Well, even because Film Safety Day is coming up for the camera assistant who passed away during the filming of Midnight Run. I think this will maybe air after this, maybe not. But it's coming up. And even in the sense of just on-set safety can be an issue. Or I don't even want to bring up the other incident that's more recent, but because I don't want to get sued. And he just recently got sued, so I won't bring it up.
And we don't know what really happens. So.
And we never do. And even here in North Carolina, The Crow was filmed here, where Bruce Lee's son was Brandon Lee died on set. But there's also the fact that you're working these hours that can be you come in at dusk, leave at dawn, or even the next day, Fraturdays, as they're also called, where Fridays have become Saturdays, or, I do remember enjoying the idea of golden hour because of the extra pay, but then realizing, how do I drive home? Especially if it's a long drive, or, when I first started, I wasn't lucky enough to be put into hotels and stuff. So I'd have to drive maybe 3 hours to get back home from where I lived to be able to pursue my career. And there's a lot of that too. Like, so how do you think you were able to sustain all of the physical as well as mental draining parts of the film? And what do you suggest for people getting into it to kind of balance themselves so they don't fall into, which brings up one of the shows you worked on about addiction, but other things that can possibly keep them from being able to have a long career, because they do fall in some of the other pitfalls of drugs, alcohol, and so many other things that are also kind of notorious with working on films, whether you're in front of the camera or behind the camera, for that matter.
No question. The rigors of daily production are just, beyond anyone's normal makeup. It's like a marathon. And I think I've likened it to throwing a wedding or a giant party every single day. For folks to think about all the stress and tension that goes into planning a wedding for one night. And then we do the same thing every single day with basically invitations and food and all the logistics that have to deal with all of these people working on these stages. And there's no question that exhaustion comes into play. People get sick, they get colds, they get strep, they get mono, they get all sorts of things. But they show up, because that's the cardinal rule in our business. No matter how strung out you might have been the night before, no matter hungover, no matter what it is, you effing show up for work no matter what. Because, like we said, Vince Lombardi says there's another person right behind you who will take your job in a second. Yeah. So I think the love of the medium, having been my soul or other souls been touched by all of these stories that we've heard over the years while sitting in the dark, eyes wide open, dilated, wanting to be moved, and we're willing participants that just basically surrender to the director or the storyteller and say, okay, wash over me, tell me your story. And I think having done that so many times as a kid, and I think others in the business, they dig down deep to remember how much those stories affect them, move their souls, transport them, and others, how powerful the medium is. So that's one big thing. And another is there are so many different jobs in this industry. There's publicity, there's marketing, there are desk jobs. If production is not for you, having come from that creative background, that's a huge endorsement for other creative endeavors. So whatever it is, if you want to stay in the business, more than likely you can if you're willing. A little bit of advice is to try to find that discipline that you're interested in as a young person and pay your dues then, because you don't want to, having been, an assistant director all your life, and now you want to get into publicity and you're basically starting in an entry-level position as an assistant, which might be less stressful than, some of these other jobs. But to try to find your calling and stick with that. And those who that have learned early on, whether they're an art director or a prop master or whatever it is, if that's what speaks to them, then they just keep going, because it's a love. It's a love of the business. It's the only business where competitors help each other. Mm-hmm. We all talk to one another. The studios talk to one another. It's really it's a crazy business, but
it's like a family reunion. Sometimes
it's like a family
you keep
reunion.
Working with the same people or people that know people, cousins, distance, what? And
pretty much.
Since some of us freeze our faces, we still look the same. I'm kidding. I want to talk about your projects that you're working on now with Simba Productions as well.
Sure.
Make sure that we cover it, because I'm so fascinated by the different things that you worked on, especially the addiction warriors. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I guess I started it 4 years ago, before the opioid crisis. I mean, before it became news. It was happening, but and that was a story that was being told. There had been a couple of documentaries, and I know that Dope Sick was in the planning stages, and so what I wanted to do was try to find the people behind treating addiction, the giants in our country and elsewhere, who are these warriors who have sacrificed everything to deal with those who have gotten sick through some sort of addiction, whether it be technology or gambling or food or whatever it is. It's all basically filling this need, this hole in the soul, if you were, of being incomplete. And usually when one takes substances on a reoccurring basis, that desire or that natural drive begins to go away. So depression and other things take place, and one thinks that life just sucks when all one has to do is rid themselves of the substance for a period of time, and then life usually comes back and is happy again.
Yeah. Whenever I delete certain apps off my phone, I'm like, oh, wow, look at all this time and beauty. And the roses smell better already. So, but granted, it's not really so much of an addiction as it is a requirement for the nature of the beast of this industry now. But no, I'm fascinated by this because you were also off air explaining a little bit more about it. Like, in the sense that there's a surgical procedure even that you followed around and some AI part of it too, which now realizing that was 4 years ago, even that seems very ahead of its time. Can you share a little bit more about that too?
Sure. So I learned a lot, and I became like a walking encyclopedia of state-of-the-art addiction. I wanted to find those who were really making a difference in treating this in their disciplines. And I found out lots of different things. Obviously, there's a common thread in addiction because it acts on the similar centers in the brain. The brain becomes hijacked, and then it craves whatever you've been feeding it, and it's difficult to stop physically and psychologically. But there are tools, as in virtual reality. I interviewed the dean of Tulane's social school, health and social services school, and he basically invented this type of virtual reality where he went into different situations, a dealer's house, a bar, a party. And these were usually, typically situations where addicts were very uncomfortable, and now being clean and sober, even more uncomfortable because you get your feelings back. So you're able to wear these glasses and be talked through this process of becoming uneasy and fearful and anxious in certain situations, so that when you're in that situation, you've practiced it, you've rehearsed it virtually. That's a huge thing that I didn't know about. And a second thing is that there's brain surgery. I talked to a brain surgeon, Dr. Casey Halpern at Stanford University. He basically has gone into people's heads for Parkinson's and other things, and while he's in there, has treated their OCD or their addiction or their obesity. And what they do is, he told me a story of how he brought a guy in for Parkinson's. He knew he had OCD. You were awake during the procedure, and they took his toothbrush to the operating room and they dropped it. And then that center of the brain lit up because he had OCD of like, that's just the worst thing in the world. Yeah. So they knew exactly which area in the brain lit up and needed mitigation. So they basically just put some electrodes in there, a little battery or whatever they do, and it blocks that situation. So it's conceivable that you are completely cured of your obesity, different maladies, depression, OCD.
But of course, insurance doesn't cover it.
It's so much of an industry now with medications. Mm-hmm. That's difficult. It's an expensive procedure. Mm-hmm. I don't really have the insight into the insurance companies in terms of how they profit from this stuff. But that's another modality that can come into play as the years go on, 25, 30, 50 years from now. Hopefully that'll be a common procedure, and then all of this medically assisted treatment of methadone and buprenorphine and Suboxone, and I mean there's a whole litany of them. Rehab and the whole thing. I mean, I still think you need to take care of the software, your psychology as well as your psychiatry, which is basically your medication and your chemical makeup. But so right now the project, I'm having some challenges because Netflix and others feel that I need more of an emotional arc with these warriors. Now, I went in and I went natural, and I didn't really try to evoke any sort of performances, but I guess I'm going to have to, in terms of, what travails, similar to your questioning. Why did you stick with it? How did you stick with it? It's so demanding, that line of questioning, which I think I have some of it, but not all of it. So I have to recut my sizzle reel and,
well, I mean,
just keep going.
What a hard life to have to recut Like you said, you just keep using the same thing, just recut. And speaking of having such a cool job, that's a perfect segue to really cool jobs. Another project you were working on as well. Can you share about that one?
Yeah, see, I'm a one guy operator. If I had some
Me too.
support,
Yeah.
behind me, maybe these ideas and things would have come to fruition. But really cool jobs was basically born out of before the days of Indeed and before the days of really immediate access with interviewing
LinkedIn
and
even,
resumes before LinkedIn. I think even before YouTube, I made these things so that people were paying for content as opposed to having it be offered for free and not having to pay for it. But what I wanted to do was show the world's absolute coolest jobs. The guy that does acquisitions for A24, Daniel Katz, the girl that tests flavors of ice cream, and the guy that works for Burton. Basically, all he does is show up at Burton events and hand out Snickers and skateboard and ski board. And,
I actually had that job in college. I was
Did you a brand manager?
I was a brand manager. I worked for the Body Shop, giving out hand massages with new body butters, and I worked with Smirnoff Ice at different concerts. So I got to go to all of these free concerts and gave out Smirnoff Ice when it first came out. Samuel Adams, I did that for them. I worked with Dr.
And how fun was that?
It was them. I mean, first of all, they paid very well. You got free product, and you got to hang out the places you would normally want to hang out anyway as a college kid. And I even did the Pepsi challenge. You remember the Pepsi versus Coke challenge where you would travel around? So I got to go to all these sporting events and have fun, just chatting. Like, clearly, I love talking to people. So it was like, I would have never stopped doing it if I could. But then it got to a point where I had to get a real job because never knew when they were coming, because it wasn't like a full-time thing for the most part. But it was perfect while in college and while pursuing filming as well. It was like the ideal situation. I know some of my friends even got to do like the Wii's and different things. So they got free Wii's and stuff, the gaming console when it first came out. So it was so much fun. If you ever have the opportunity out there, I will say, it's a great job. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt, to be an ambassador.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's like influencers without having to make content.
I know. Unbelievable.
I was the pre-influencer. No, I'm kidding. So what was the favorite job that you got to interview other than brand ambassador? Was there another one you were like, whoa, I need to rethink this, or tell my kids this is what they should do, or, people?
Well, obviously the acquisitions job for A24, my friend Daniel Katz, that's a great job.
Yeah.
But it's good for a young person without family because you're going to film festivals all over the world, which sound exciting, maybe for the first or second or third year. But, you start getting into your 10th year of the tour, which begins with Sundance at the beginning of the year, and then you just keep going festival after festival. So it's a dream job for me. I now my kids are grown; they're out of the house, and I wouldn't mind going to some of those festivals now and talking to filmmakers and see if they're interested in selling their film to me.
No, I mean, I was like thinking like, ooh, that sounds like a fun job, because I grew up traveling all the time and moving from place to place. So I like staying still is really hard for me. I went to 26 different schools, just to give you an idea, and 6 colleges. I liked moving. But like my daughter, she's had the benefit to some extent of growing up in basically the same 5 miles, for her entire life. So she's got friends since toddler, and I don't know what that's like, but I think traveling is so important because it really does open your eyes up to how people live beyond the history books, beyond like you really get to see and open your eyes, and you get to meet people that you would never otherwise meet. And so whenever I travel, I always try to bring her with me if I can, so she can experience different places and see different things. And my mom, luckily being an artist, she normally can help me. So while I'm at work, they can go play and then vice versa, whatever. But when you said, I was like, not good for families. I just, if at that price point, you just buy a tutor. You can learn art history in France. Like, like what? Like this is, or learn a new language and all of that. But I do understand that can be very tiring on a child at the same time. Cause I didn't get to learn an instrument because I was moving every 6 months. Like you can't keep it up. Or even with sports, thankfully I played soccer since I was in kindergarten. So it was easy for me to keep that up because you can kind of practice alone, even as an only child and so on. But yeah, I guess that wouldn't be the best thing to do. 5 more years, maybe. I got 5 years to learn all about acquisitions. But I will also say, because I do see that's my alarm that's going off. Sorry. I was trying to secretly change it without being obvious and didn't. But I do want to ask, because last year I had the benefit of being on SAG-AFTRA's nominating committee. So I genuinely got to watch every film that was being considered for an award before they streamed it down to the nominees. And it was actually really difficult to watch all the films because some of them are so like dark and
come on, and Bergman Island and all of it. They're so dark
last
and
year was just
slow.
like so many. Yeah, and it was
Power of the Dog. Even is it's slow. It's going to win Best Picture though.
And I actually went to the virtual Q&A and was able to ask questions of the I'm blanking on her name now. No, the woman character. Oh, she was in Spider-Man. I just want to call her MJ because I remember her from Vampires of a Diary too.
Oh, I forget. I have a list.
Oh, great. I can Google that real quick too. But like, it was interesting to hear from her.
Jesse Plemons.
Her husband.
Oh, her. Kirsten Dunst.
Kirsten Dunst. Thank you. Yep. Kirsten Dunst shared during the virtual that the director, Jane Campion, I believe. Campion. Okay. That she made her clean her house to prove that she was capable of playing this role. And then when I saw the movie, because I had seen parts of it, but I couldn't finish it because I kept feeling like I felt like I kept missing parts, but it was really, and I would like start texting like, I can't text while I'm watching this. I got to pay attention because I have the Q&A. So then my main question was like, how did you stay in character for such long periods of time, the periods of just the camera on you with no like there was just nowhere really to go with it, or they would even the speed that they spoke. So it was just last year though, it was just like so many movies about narcissists. I think they were trying to give hints politically, and it was just like, I'm tired of seeing women getting beaten, getting abused by these men. And then of course all this stuff came out about some of the actors really living that lifestyle off camera. So it's just like, oh great, they were enjoying the torture they were putting me through probably in between scenes. So that had to be fun. But I was like, whatever happened to the movies of the day, or even why they don't award movies that really inspire hope? And Coda. Okay.
Coda on Apple.
Okay.
Is the story of a deaf family, and their daughter can hear, and she's their advocate. And it's so positive, heartwarming, and everything you want the movies to be. Coda. That was my favorite movie of the year.
Ah, okay. Not Spider-Man. Just kidding. I haven't seen Spider-Man. So don't. Speaking of MJ, don't want to ruin it yet because I'm waiting for it to be a screen. Wow.
And there's also a very positive TV series on Amazon called As We See It. About those on the spectrum, and they live together with Kevin Bacon and Kira Sedgwick's daughter. Sosie Bacon is the star of this As We See It. She's the counselor who lives in the house with the kids on the spectrum.
All right. See, those
As We See It.
TV and films I have not watched yet, but I do have the screeners. I just got Coda and Belfast yesterday, as a matter of fact, and I remember thinking, there's no way I'm watching Belfast, because when I lived in Europe, in Turkey, we didn't have although we had a color television, they didn't broadcast in color. I'm like, I'm not going backwards. It's hard for me to watch black and white now. Like, it's like, no, I live in a world of color. I want to see my entertainment in color, but I may still watch it. It's just,
it's a sweet movie.
nominate.
It's about
Okay.
a boy. It's about a boy. So it's sweet. Belfast.
Okay.
Kenneth Branagh made a sweet movie. I don't know. Maybe that could upset The Power of the Dog. I don't know. Maybe.
Well, I will admit, even though it was a very slow moving film, and it was, I mean, I don't want to spoil it for anyone that hasn't seen it. It was so beautiful. And knowing that, I assumed it was actually filmed in Montana, but it was filmed in, oh man, New Zealand. Yes, New Zealand.
New Zealand, right.
That's one of my bucket places. So it's like, oh wow, that's what New Zealand's like. So it helped me with that sense too. And just when I rewatched it, I could see more of why it's nominated. But I do think they miss. I'm glad this year they're making it where there's a voted choice option with the Academy Awards, so you can vote for your own best films, and who knows if it'll win, considering there's so many great options this year in films and television for that matter. But earlier you had mentioned Dope Sick, and I was obsessed with that show because I had surgery this year and was put on oxycodone, but only 5 milligrams, thankfully. And I was just like, my mind was blown at how much they were giving, because 5 milligrams had me knocked out. Like I couldn't imagine those poor people and the addictions they cause and all the evil.
Tolerance.
Yeah. That I have no tolerance. That's why I don't drink, because that puts me to sleep. So I don't have a lot of tolerance for any of those things. But now that, is there any predictions that you want to say for some of the?
Well, I think for those who want a little insider information about the business, is the Miramax and the Weinstein brothers and their PR firm. I know we shouldn't mention their name, and Harvey is certainly a pig, one of the biggest pigs alive.
Yeah, I remember Entourage being introduced to him for first. That was one of my Netflix things that I watched. So when you brought that, I was like, oh yeah.
He's a bad guy, but their company back in the 80s was a real proving ground for superstars who were interning or just at low-level jobs. And they basically came up with the Academy campaign, the Oscar campaign. They were the first studio to really do it in a beautiful way. The English Patient and all of their beautiful, wonderful films at the beginning. They would send out these really opulent kits and giant gold boxes and really, really opulent stuff. And Netflix today is like Miramax. They own the Oscar season. They have so much money that they just basically canvas it with wonderful, enticing things that get people to A, as you know, watch the movie, and B,
binge, even, because all of this talk about short attention spans, not on Netflix. You'll watch 3 seasons of a show in a weekend. So yeah,
no doubt. But the Power of the Dog is theirs. So they have a whole list of films, as does Amazon and Apple and Hulu. But Netflix is the king because they have the most money. So always consider that when people are awarded or people win awards, because more than likely Power of the Dog will win Best Picture. Jane Campion, who directed it, will win Best Director. Nicole Kidman, I think, from being the Ricardos, should win Best Actress, I think. Because what happens is the Academy likes to spread it around. They'll give the original screenplay to Belfast. They'll give the adapted screenplay to Power of the Dog. Will Smith will win, for King Richard. And if there were more ethnic choices, I think those choices would have come to the forefront, because Hollywood is really trying to have the pendulum swing back to diversity, and almost is doing some overkill these days. I've heard, lots of studio folks talking about how they're frustrated now. They're not in the movie business. They're into targeting ethnic groups, which is a social thing.
Yeah, when I'm thinking about it, it's not so much that it's a group of people that 80% of the people who buy tickets to movies are ethnic. So you should be making material for the people who support you, as opposed to we are so used to seeing films where we're not on in front of the camera or we're not behind the camera. So the people on camera don't even look right because they have hairstylists or makeup artists that don't know how to work on their ethnicity or so, or even just right now, like I have this issue with my podcast. I haven't been airing the audio because I used Anchor, which is owned by Spotify. And it's like, enough's enough. Like, when are you going to ever step up for the people who support you or are involved? And it's not just what he said, but just realizing how much money they're throwing at him compared to all of the music, all of the people who make the music that made people come to that platform in the first place are getting so little. Like, I mean, I'm not planning to get rich off of my audio, but it's just a matter of like, there isn't any other games to play there. You know, like at some point we've swallowed enough crow, and I'm sure you can relate to this as well, feeling overlooked in that sense, where it's just, it's time for everyone, because we have options now. We can stream, we can join several different streaming
Right,
platforms.
there's so many options.
Yeah, but we're still being overlooked when it comes to awards season, or that's why the NAACP Image Awards still exist. But it's just, it would be nice if it was more inclusive. But that also means like Golden Globes, like they're not even getting aired this year because they had no people of color part of the Critics' Choice, or yeah, part of the deciding committee. I can't think of the term now, but so it, you know, that's why I'm like, you're not so much trying to pivot to being, you know, making things towards ethnicities, but just making the table to include more people. There's enough pie for everyone there. You know, not everyone is going to watch certain things. And even I think it's a great way to really bridge communities together, making that melting pot that America is supposed to be. If we show real life scenarios, like you shouldn't film a film that's based in certain areas of New York City, knowing it's a very ethnic area and there's no ethnic people there.
Right.
You know, like how in the world did you like? You're like, hey, if you're beyond this paper bag,
Right,
you're not
leave.
allowed in this film. Like, I was like, okay, I didn't live in New York that long, but even I know how do they do that? Like, because I was the light skinned person there, and I'm black, so. Yeah. So,
well, I think it's a pendulum swing. I mean, Americans are fat, dumb, and happy when things are going well and the money is flowing. Hollywood is an evil place. It really is. It's a flesh factory. It always has been. And those in charge have power of making people stars and releasing these movies all over the world. There's great power in it, and it gets just clouded and removed where they have no
they want to help
clue.
their friends and maybe not their
Completely.
driver's friends, or
Absolutely.
You know, yeah. No, because I mean, my father even just recently, I had a friend of mine who is Jewish who was looking out for me for an opportunity. I was supposed to go to the Super Bowl to film the red carpet events there, and my father, like, he was like, I never even thought to try to help you with getting opportunities like that. Like, it didn't even, because he was like, in his world, the nepotism is something that you can't do that. You can't give jobs to people you're related to. But I mean, we learned from last presidency, like everybody should help their own family, especially if they're talented enough to do it. And that's the other part of it. It's just, if you only are working within your own community, then other people won't ever get those opportunities. They won't get the chance to try it. And even with different people, like, I can only speak from the Black experience, but like my great grandparents weren't even allowed to go to college. My grandmother was barely allowed to finish high school in that sense, because like the finances weren't there. Her parents were sharecroppers, and so she had to work the fields and so on. And my mom and all of her siblings were able to go to college, and most of them have their doctorates or law degrees or and judges and so on. But it was because there was there were opportunities for them to get over, because they lived in a very rural area. There were opportunities that helped them get chances to try. Like Duke's has this program where if you get a certain grades, no matter what color you are, they'll come and try to place you in colleges. And, you know, there's other ways to kind of work the system when you don't have that built-in community that can help you. Because I joined a lot of these different organizations during the pandemic, and it was just like, when I saw the way certain ethnic groups would just really help each other out, and like, oh, you need this? Oh, I know somebody could do this. Oh, my cousin could do this for you. Like, it was like, this is the way things should be. This is the way things should work. But it should be that everyone does that for everyone. And that it's not so much because we look alike that I'm helping you, but because we think alike, because we love alike, because we have the same dreams and passions for what America should be like, or just in this world, entertainment can be like. And the fact is, like, everyone at some form, whether they're reading a book, watching movies, whatever, they're being entertained by our industry, and we could really change that narrative. So there's not any more George Floyds. There's not any more of these incidents that happened with the Tree of Life. And, you know, like, it's time for that. Like, I was very hopeful with all the horrible things that happened, that people like that clicked now, like, oh, we need to work together, come together. That's why I joined the Black Jewish Entertainment Alliance for that same reason, and was helping with that and moderating a lot of their events, because we got to come together like they did during civil rights. Martin Luther King couldn't have gotten as far as he could without the help of the entertainment industry, but also other people getting involved that gave him that opportunity to speak at places he would have never been allowed to, because he couldn't even walk in the building.
Yeah, well put. Well, it'll change. Yeah. It'll continue to change, and hopefully it'll get better. I mean, the country is young, and we've made a lot of mistakes.
That's a very good point.
It's not like Europe, where it's much more homogenized. Here, it's very divided where you live, and it's like many different countries in Europe. You know, our states. We have all these provincial idiosyncrasies and all these nuances, you know, of different areas that have their own characteristics that are completely opposite, like the Northeast, you know.
Like, what? Yankees? It was so funny that people would call me a Yankee. I'm like, what? Like, they think I'm an American. But, you know, it's just anytime you were different, you must have been a Yankee, because they put me in ESL when I first moved to America, because my accent was so strong. And I'm like,
where are you from? West Indies?
No, I grew up in Germany, Turkey, and Holland.
Oh, Germany.
Yeah, so I had a thick German accent to be.
Wow.
Because that's where I started school, was in German school. So, yeah.
Cool.
I miss it now, because, like, diversity is kind of supported more now, and having an accent. Like, I'll watch Sofia Vergara, and I'm like, oh, not that my accent was that pretty, but it's like, you know, I was told, like, oh, you won't be able to make it in.
Right, kill the accent.
Yeah, like, you got to sound American, you got to sound mid. It was Midwestern, very broad, and so it helped me a lot, because I worked on Dawson's Creek, and it was filmed here in North Carolina, but they were looking for people that didn't sound Southern, and so, you know, luckily I was able to get that gig. But again, I love the direction that things are going. It just seems very slow moving, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions, because everything's being so politicized or polarizing at the same time that shouldn't be. And so I'm glad to have this conversation with someone that actually is in the business, that understands the power of it all, and
no question
keeps going in that direction. So,
well, the country's only 246 years old, so maybe when it's 300, I hope
I live that long.
It will have progressed.
I don't know. I think the next generation, they seem to have a better head on their hands about things.
Absolutely.
Like, I hopefully my daughter won't have to have the same fights or concerns or fears. Great conversation, and I love everything that you're doing, and I want to make sure that everyone knows how they can keep up with you and reach out to you, or if you have any mentorship programs that you're doing with Simba or anything else.
Simba Productions .net is our website, and you know, we're available to consult, and we also are thinking about starting up some classes, some screenwriting classes and things like that. So just check us out at Simba Productions on the internet.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much again for being my guest. This has been great episode of Filmmaker Friday. I keep saying I'm going to try to make these 30 minutes, but of course I can't help it. When we start talking about great things, I can't stop talking. So thank you for being so fascinating, so interesting. And I cannot believe the Robert Kuhl connection, because I had him on last season and just was like, this is where I stop. I mean, how do you go any further than Celebration? Because my goal is always Diana Ross, because when I was a kid, missed in translation, I thought you could pick who you prayed to, because joys of different languages and being Catholic and all. So I picked her. And so until I was like 13, I was praying to Diana Ross.
That's so great.
My prayers and stuff.
That's like a beautiful movie.
Yeah. And it's funny because my daughter's hair was a lot like Diana Ross, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe. But she's very shy, but she does want to be a director, so there's still hope. All right. Well, thanks again for being my guest. This was great. And
thanks for having me. It was fun.
Touch. Yeah, I love talking with you.
Same.
And tell Albert hello for me.
I will.
All right. I'll see you at WOW.
Yes, you will.
Okay. All right. Well, have a good night.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. That's another episode of Filmmakers Fridays. And I'm your host, Camille Kauer. Make sure you tune in or keep up with me at CamilleKauer.com.